Hey, welcome to the Envizion More Podcast. As we hit our 1-year mark, we're revisiting our top 3 episodes of 2024. These were the conversations that resonated the most, offered engaging conversation, and encouraged listeners to envision more. Whether you're listening again or catching them for the first time, we're excited to share these standout moments with you. Today's episode was both our kickoff and our top performing one. We hope you enjoy it.
Hey, this is Wayne Wagner. I am the president of Visionary Wealth Management, and this is the Envizion More Podcast. This is our first ever episode. My good friend and professional coach, Trent Booth, president of Veritas Leadership. Trent's going to be a regular guest here and helping orchestrate guests and things like that over time. He adds a lot of value to our conversations and commentary, and we're grateful to have him. Trent, thank you so much for being here and helping me get this lifted off the ground.
I just love talking with Wayne Wagner for one. So that's real easy for us to have regular time scheduled, but also really curious about how financial advisors get this done, as that's a large portion of our business. So Wayne, what would you say would be the thing you're most excited to dive into today? First podcast, what do you want to make sure everybody knows about us?
I think that the podcast, and quite big question we've asked over and over, is why a podcast? And from my perspective, it gives us an opportunity to just capture ideas. Over time, our tagline at Visionary Wealth Management is helping you envision more. And we work with our clients every day to help them envision a different future, a brighter future, bigger impact, taking first generation wealth and moving into second, third generation wealth, those kinds of things. But what we've seen over and over and over again is that every successful person has got an origin story. And so I think most of us in our 40s and 50s, really enjoyed the early Marvel movies and some of the origins of Wolverine and the origins of Captain America and Wonder Woman and things like that. But that origin story of where successful people come from, they typically have to face some obstacles, get forged in some fires of refining. They probably make some mistakes along the way. And then they learn some lessons and they build off of those mistakes. They build off those early mindsets that they were handed. And then they get better and they build something significant. And then the big question we're asking is, how do we take that first generation success and turn it into multi-generational impact? That's what we want to be students of here in this podcast, is finding successful people, extracting their best ideas on the things they overcame, and then how can we put them together and really boil it down so that we can ingest that data and that content ourselves and apply it, and more importantly, take it and put it into our kids. I use the word inoculate a lot. To how do we boil it down, concentrate it, and stick it in our kids to help them avoid the mistakes we made, right? So that's the gist of what we're trying to do with this podcast.
You and I are mutual fans of Jim Rohn's work, and he used to say that there's 2 places to get information: personal experience, or he'd call it PE, and other people's experience. And he would say other people's experience is less expensive to learn from the mistakes and wins of others. Yeah. In this case, I think we're mostly going to be focusing on that strengths-based approach for people who are rocking it. And I would, for those that don't know Wayne Wagner, this is a guy that reads a ton of books, 50 plus a year is my understanding here.
Yeah.
And so this is just a different way to get big ideas, Wayne. And you are naturally a very curious guy. I see you all the time just seeking to understand how something works. So I'm really excited about embarking on this journey with you.
Yeah. I like one of the comments you brought to my team is, what's the best that can happen? Right. And so, I think even as an entrepreneur, we can have a mindset of, what's the worst that can happen?
How can this go south?
Constantly looking for the other shoe that's going to drop, the next tax law that's going to change, the next turn in the market. those kinds of things. And I think that you've helped my team recalculate and recalibrate a little bit to say, okay, yes, and that's also a Trent Boothism. Yes, and uh, what's the best that can happen? And the reality will probably be somewhere between what's the worst and what's the best. It's never going to be one or the other fully, but what we do know is that 80 to 90% of the worst that can happen is not going to happen, right? It's so.
Well, it's reasonable to ask both questions, isn't it? I mean, but we usually just focus on the downside or the risk, if you will. But there's risk of missing the upside opportunity, right? The opportunity cost of not asking what's the best thing that could happen here, or what's the greatest thing happening in a family. So I love that we're going to park mostly on the strengths-based approach here.
Yeah. Well, and the goal here is going to be, so over time, we're going to have, we're going to start with some core close relationships, business, professional alliances and relationships, things like that for visionary wealth management, some clients that we'll bring in and gather from that. And then we'll start to layer out into more and more experts in their fields, people who have accomplished something. Again, what we're trying to gather is what's their origin story, what they learn, how can we apply that, and then also how can we share that? Because one of the biggest things that we preach to clients all the time is it's more important what we leave in our kids than what we leave to our kids. And while we're a financial planning firm, we're a wealth management firm, right? We manage money for people, but if we don't leave values to our kids, look, there's a reason 70% of wealth does not make it to the second generation, and 90% of wealth doesn't make it to the third generation. It's because we don't pass the values, we don't pass the lessons, and yet if we can teach those lessons and pass those values on, and we've got to start earlier in the process, right? May and I are going through a process right now with our kids at age 19 and 22 called Family Brand. Chris and Melissa Smith have this terrific curriculum. We're going through this with this process with our own kids. And this is, look, at 19 and 22, first of all, just getting everybody in the same room for an hour a week to try to talk about this stuff is a miraculous feat in and of itself.
It's like herding cats. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But this, look, if we'd have done this 15 years ago, May and I could have done the work and then gone to the kids at 5 and 8 and said, hey, these are our family values. This is how we want to show up. This is what we want to be known for in the world. This is what we want when people interact with our family. Here's how we want to be perceived, and here's how we want to act. And here's why. Here's the faith behind it. Here's the reason we want to show up like that. At age 19 and 22, we're not telling them anything, right? So, I mean, there's the natural generational gap there. And I think May and I have done a better job than most at keeping the lines of communication open. They don't think that we're 40 IQ imbeciles, but so there's interaction and communication there. But like, if we're not going to go tell them here's our family values at this point and expect them to interact with that other than a nice pat on the head and say that's nice for you and mom, that's not how I want to live my life. And so us going through it as a family right now it is, man, and it's hard work because again, just getting everybody together. Like Chris and Melissa say, oh, this is going to take like 5 or 6 weeks, and we're like 4 months into it and still not done. And
well, here's what I love, Wayne, is that you guys aren't starting from zero. I mean, as parents go, you and May are some of the most intentional parents that Christy and I know. And we love and celebrate that. So it's not like these are the first conversations we've had about life and how it works and mistakes we've made and how they can grow from it, et cetera. So I do love that Chris and Melissa have come up with the Smiths, the family values, to come up with curriculum that could guide you guys. That has value in it. Maybe even more valuable because you guys have had a lot of conversations along the road.
And I would say it's been a little rocky for us. The process has been a little rocky for us because we've had those conversations. So where we see, a little bit of disconnect, we'll lean in and ask some questions with the kids, and the kids are like, well, we kind of already know that, how we want to show up.
Right.
Like, yeah, but this is a process to actually put language to it, actually put shared vocabulary to it. So that, when the question gets asked, we all come out up with the same answer. And the reason, and my daughter and her fiance had an experience with us. May and I go to a faith-based philanthropic group once a year. It's like a 3-day event. And CJ, our daughter, and her fiance Jacob went with us, and they went to kind of the rising generation group within that conference. And they met and interacted with a lot of 3rd, 4th, 5th generation wealth families. And they came out with a pretty bad taste in their mouth, where they were just like, man, these people are like complaining that the first class seat wasn't available on the plane to get here this weekend. And there was just a lot of the extreme privilege, right?
Sure.
Extreme
Entitlement.
entitlement.
Yeah.
And what we are sharing with them as part of the family brand exercise is, hey, shared vocabulary that we can pass through our 2 generations and then on to the next generation, to your kids. That's how we inoculate against entitlement.
Yeah.
To say, okay, the billionaire kids that are going off the rails in Hollywood, that's how wealthy, that's what the perception of 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation wealth is. And it's almost accepted in our society. That's not how we want to show up.
It almost seems like if it's inevitable that if a family's wealthy, they're going to be spoiled. They're going to be ruined by that wealth.
Right.
And what I love about what you're doing here is giving us a path here where it doesn't have to go like that. But naturally, organically, possibly that is that inevitable, maybe. But if we actually engage, let's talk a little bit more about language there and having common, a common language or common vocabulary, as you say there. Words matter, right?
Words, absolutely. Well, I'll steal from Chris Smith again here. So, Chris would say that language is the building blocks, the DNA of all creation. The Bible says it's, God spoke the world into existence. And we still see today, nothing ever gets accomplished until someone speaks about it. We can think about it, we can dream about it, but until we write it or speak it, nothing actually gets done about it. And so that the using language to build the framework for the values on which we're going to build successful lives and multi-generational wealth, that is fundamental and core. You used Jim Rohn, referenced Jim Rohn already, and success is something you attract by the person you become. And so, but how do you become something or someone that you're not? Well, the way you do that is, you're the next 100 books read away from being a different person. The next 100 books you read are going to change you. One of them won't change you, but 100 of them will. And then the next 100 after that, and the next 100 after that. And so and all of that is language. All of, what is a book other than content that's put down, someone who has actually accomplished something, taking time to boil down the concepts, the lessons they've learned, put it into language so that we can ingest it. Right.
Yeah. In fact, I think your listeners would be really curious about where you got into this voracious need to devour content and learning.
Yeah.
I don't think it started that way, Wayne. Where was the disruption for you?
No, I came out of college pretty burned out on reading. So I went to Bible college. And so I came out with a secondary math education. So I had a lot of math and a Bible degree. So I had two bachelor's degrees, but a lot of it was studying the Bible as a textbook.
Sure.
And so when you study the Bible as a textbook, if you go one of two ways, you either fall deeply in love with it and it becomes a passion and you go into ministry, or what happened with me, you get completely burned out and you're
I
like,
will
I don't
never
want
read
to
a
pick
book again.
yeah. And so
And most don't after college. So
that's right. Yeah. The number of people who never read another book after college is astonishing. The lack of reading that goes on. My wife got into Herbalife, a network marketing business. And I've shared this quick story on a couple of other podcasts, but we ended up in Kansas City in a hotel suite with a guy named Brad Harris. Brad was a former airplane mechanic who had started selling Herbalife weight loss, health, and nutrition products. And, when we met him 25 plus years ago, he was making, $500,000 a year. Lord only knows what he's making now. I hope it's exponentially more than that because he deserves it. He's an amazing leader and someone who just you have termed and used the word net giver. Brad's a net giver.
Yeah.
And he gives way more than he takes
Mm.
in every relationship. And that was our experience with him way back when, late 90s. We met him, and he basically said to me, he said, Wayne, if your wife sticks with this company, she's going to be really successful. You two seem like a bright couple, really nice. We have a shared faith, common values. One of the things we see is that when people get really activated in Herbalife, we are asking people to commit to reading at least 50 books a year. And you understand the concept of being unequally yoked in the context of your faith, because when you're raised in a specific faith, you're kind of trained, don't marry someone of a different faith, because the core values, the faith values for the household will be at odds.
Yeah, it's hard
And
to be aligned. Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to find alignment in a home when the two people, some people make it work, but lots have found it's very difficult. And so he used that common language with me to find a common ground, common tether. And he said, I want to tell you, Wayne, that if your wife reads 50 books a year for the next 3 years, you will not be married to the same woman that you said I do.
She's going to grow.
Yeah, she's going to
You better
grow.
grow with her.
Yeah. And he challenged me. He said, look, here's the next 50 books I'm asking her to read. Well, I was at a point in my career, I was working for a guy who, I couldn't put language to it. But one of the first 5 books I read was John Maxwell's book on leadership, which he's got a couple dozen of them. But, and in that book early on, I hit the law of the cap. And I'm like, holy crap, that's the language I need to explain my relationship with my boss. Because I was having conversations with him about, well, what if I grow my financial planning practice to here? What if we grow it to there? What if we explored going in this direction instead of that direction? And he was saying things to me like, well, you're not a big enough fish to ask those kinds of questions. And I didn't know.
Your
I
boss said
felt
this.
like, yeah, and my boss said this. And so like, I'm feeling that's not right. That's not, there's a vision. And then I read John Maxwell, and he's like,
Right.
law of the cap is when you impose limiting beliefs or limiting mindset on people who are under you. And, the people under that person can never grow past the mindset of the person above them.
Mm-hmm.
So the only answer is for that person to leave. Well, my boss was the owner of the company. He's not coming over. Or for the person who's being capped to leave. And I'm like, well, holy crap, I have to leave.
Yeah.
And, so I started voraciously reading, and it got through the first 50 books, and I was like, okay, I'm a different person after 50 books. It didn't take 150.
Yeah.
50 did it.
Yeah.
And now I'm broke. So now it's been 25 years or so of averaging around 50 books a year, and continuing to draw in content everywhere I can get it, because every book teaches me something. It may solidify something I believed going in, that I knew I was going to disagree with the author on some things.
Yeah.
And now I know more why I disagree with the author on those things.
Sure.
Or when I come in with a truly open mind. And I mean, this past year, I've read a few books, The Man Who Broke Capitalism, The Myth of Capitalism, a couple of these books. And these are authors who are pointing out severe deficiencies in the American capitalistic system today, and the brokenness and the broken relationship between Wall Street and Main Street. Well, I'm a financial advisor who puts clients' money in the stock market, in the publicly traded markets.
Yeah.
And so I come at that with a bias of, these guys are socialists, these guys are communists. This author probably thinks that we should just, take everything and give everybody an equal share of everything in the country. And, I come at it with that negative bias.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read the book, and I'm like, holy crap, Jack Welch totally broke capitalism.
Uh-huh.
He really messed us up. And the second generation legacy of his business practices is pretty dreadful.
Doesn't hold up over time, does it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Wall Street has turned our economy into a de facto Hunger Games environment where everybody sends their wealth and their profits to Wall Street, to the publicly traded companies and the private equity firms. And it sucks. How do we build it better? How do we do it better?
So if I
Um,
hear you right, I hear you saying, I went in not wanting to like these books and at
yeah,
times gleaning some
absolutely.
truth that you agree with.
Yeah. But that's the power of a book, right? That's the power of the written word, is that, we come at it with we come at content with an open mind, with an educated set of assumptions, up to that point, but we're open to being changed. We're open to adapting. And that's that, having a mindset shift, right? So
Sure.
most of the people in the financial planning world, the wealth management world, use language like, retirement planning,
Hmm.
right? Helping you live the retirement of your dreams,
Sure.
as though your working years are this painful, awful process that you have to wrestle and survive so that you can someday eventually live life walking a beach or playing golf or, whatever it is. And that's just not a life well lived in my mind.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's the American dream that we've written down, that we've bought from politicians and power brokers that want to put us in a box and say you're a good employee, you pay your W-2 taxes.
Mm.
And yet so frequently, if we can get a hold of a client who's building that first generation wealth, and and then help change the conversation, because and how we change the conversation. I mean, we have a client who is going to come out of a role. He's been a major player, early 50s, major player in a big pharmaceutical company. He's going to come out of a role, low 8-figure net worth. He's done a phenomenal job accumulating, building first generation wealth. Unbelievable. Easily top 1% in the country
Mm.
and 1% in the world. He never has to work another day in his life. He can live the lifestyle he has for the next 150 years, and he's not going to run out of money.
Hmm.
And so the conversation he and his wife and I are having is about calling. Are you called to do
Mm.
something?
Mm.
Like, are you called to go serve poor people in an inner city? Are you called? Do you feel like a physical, emotional, spiritual calling to go do something? Or is the next decade really an opportunity for stewardship? Because, if you're burned out, if your marriage is on fire, if your relationship with your kids is burned into the ground, if
Hmm.
you're in trauma or crisis, then now's a great time to pause, step away, even if just for a couple of years. But if that's not going on and you're not really feeling called to, there's very few people in their early 50s who have the earning capacity that you do over the next 10 years. And what if we could turn that 10, $11 million net worth into 50 million in the next 10 years? Not because we're such amazing
Hmm.
investors or, rates of return. Simple math on what the market should do over time and what you have the power to save because of your earning capacity.
It's
And
a
what
great
if
story here. Boy,
Yeah,
I mean, Wayne, what I'm loving about this is that envision more concept. It's not just about envisioning more for that great future. It's about living well right now
yeah,
while we're also working towards that. There's
yeah.
another podcast a friend of mine runs called The Lifestyle Investor.
Mm,
And I love it's Justin Donald. We should probably have him on as a guest at some point, but you've been doing this for a long time. It's not just about that future dream, right?
right.
It's not just that we're selling them, hey, someday you'll be happy. It's like, hey, let's do a calling now. Let's engage
Yeah,
in meaningful, awesome work right now while we're building towards an exciting future.
yeah,
Let's talk for a second. You just mentioned about pharmaceuticals there. You've really niched down into the pharma community. Can we talk about A, how we got there, B,
yeah,
why you love it so much? Because
yeah,
you do a huge advocate
yeah.
for pharmaceutical
I
companies.
joke with people and say, "Hey, if this financial planning gig doesn't work out, I'm going to go become an advocate for the pharmaceutical industry, because the pharmaceutical industry has an amazing sales proposition." Trent, you've lived your life. You're unhealthy. You need massive healthcare intervention here. You're either going to die an untimely and early death, or you can have surgeries and debilitating things go on that you can be done to you, or you can take our drug and it will start to mitigate some of the symptoms and situations that you're facing. So your choices are die early, have massive traumatic surgery, or take our drug. You choose. Now you can whine and cry about the price of our drug, but your other options are not all that attractive.
Sure.
So I find that the pharmaceutical industry has done enormous good for mankind. And they continue to wage battle against things like mental illness and rare diseases and cancers that take far too many people far too soon. So I got my start. I worked for Zeneca Pharmaceuticals for 10 months right out of college. Was in their marketing department, helping to put together PowerPoint presentations and spreadsheets, helping run a couple of forecast models back in the day. And I developed a real respect for the people in the industry. And then I became a financial advisor. And the financial advisor, I came into the industry through a company that was really an insurance agency. They wanted us selling health or life insurance, disability insurance, annuities, and if you picked up some assets under management or some wealth to manage, that was by accident, it was okay. And I looked at the folks in the pharmaceutical industry. I'm like, at the time, I was like, well, wow, these people are making like 120 to 150,000 a year. And then they get a bonus that's like between 20 and 40% of their base salary. And then they get long-term incentives that are like 30 to 50% of their base salary. Well, gosh, if I could put together 100 households, excuse me, that could give me 100,000 a year of new assets to manage, that'd be like $10 million a year of new assets under management, which 1% fees in our world is $100,000 a year of recurring money that you don't have to go find on January 1st, right? Now, if you're selling product and January 1st, everything zeroes out, you got to go sell product.
Right. Yeah.
I thought, gosh, if I could do that for 10 years, my practice could be generating $1 million a year of revenue. And we could help people grow their wealth, get financially independent. You'll hear we talk much more about financial independence than we do retirement, because retirement is where you put your feet up, go home, put your feet up and die. Financial independence is where you got a plan to have an impact, right? So if we could find 100 households to do that, well, then we started getting some of those households. And then some other questions started to come up. Hey, Wayne, I'm getting recruited by this other company. Can you help me evaluate the offers? Can you help me negotiate? And so we would get involved in those things, and we would be as passive or active in that process as the client wanted. Everything from just putting a spreadsheet together and putting it in front of them while they're in the conversation with the recruiter, all the way up to sitting in on the calls and having meetings directly face to face with the recruiter and hiring manager to talk about why your offer is insufficient to woo my client to come work for you. And really everything in between. And then, hey, can you manage money for my mom and dad? Hey, Wayne, you said that we probably should be setting up accounts for our kids. And so sometimes now we're working with 3 and 4 generations of family trees, working to manage that wealth intergenerationally. And, we have, substantially more than 100 households that are giving us substantially more than $100,000 a year on average. And, and some clients who are now starting to retire and are in those retirement years at this stage and enjoying, those years of financial independence. And some of them are putting their feet up and enjoying a lot more golf than I will ever play. But a lot of them are involved in nonprofits and involved in industry organizations or contributing through part-time employment to new projects that really light them up and excite them. And so, or getting involved in their kids' lives in ways that they had never anticipated, but had long hoped and dreamed for. So that we got involved because, I great respect for the industry and great clients. I mean, these people are, they as a population group, the people who work in the pharmaceutical industry are kind-hearted, good-hearted souls who want to have a positive impact on the world. All we do at Visionary Wealth Management is help bring that message home, because they'll go to work and spend 60 to 80 hours a week, their whole career, helping a company have the impact.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
just help bring that messaging home and say, okay, that's great for the company, for the big tagline company. What's the Smith family?
Mhm.
What's the Jackson family? What are you, what's your impact as a family? What do you want to have? So,
I
we
just
just help bring that home.
I
So,
love how much you love your clients and how the lines blur. When you talk about envisioning more, wait, I don't know any other financial advisors that are getting on a call and advocating for their client with somebody that's about to maybe hire them. Like that's more than financial advisors are supposed to do. Maybe even I don't know.
well,
Envisioning more.
first of all, it's we're advisors for our clients, and so but a lot of times it has, clients are great. Look, we live in a highly specialized world.
Hmm.
And a couple of quick stories on that. Clients need to be empowered. This isn't their core competency. That's not what they've spent their career. They haven't spent their career figuring out how to negotiate the finer points of a long-term incentive package,
Right.
right?
Or even
That's not
understand it. Yeah.
right. So just understanding how these things work and how the
Yeah.
pieces fit together is an art unto itself. And so, meanwhile, I mean, we have a client who's got a doctorate in pharmaceutical in law. His doctorate dissertation was the defense of a patent in international court. This is a really bright guy, but negotiating the finer points of a compensation package wasn't a law class, wasn't on the class he took in law school.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, for and clients need to be emboldened because
Mhm.
we know that you don't get 100% of what you don't ask for.
Yeah.
Um, I had a client who was a chief people person at a big pharmaceutical company for a long time, and he said they studied the commercial organization, kind of the sales and marketing organization versus the physician side of the organization, and they traced like you would hire two different people at 25, 26 years old. One of them had an MD, one of them had an MBA. The MD, you were paying about $50,000 more a year. You trace those two people through an organization for the next 25 years, and the MBA guy is making 2 times the amount that the physician is making. And so they back tested and dug into that and so to try to find out why. Well, it's because the MBA guy, every 18 months, he or she was looking for the new job, the new promotion, maybe changing companies,
Mhm.
but they kept advancing.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
physician went into the research side, found research that just consumed them, and they would spend 25 years working on the same molecule.
Yeah. Doing great work, but also not
Amazing
advancing the
work
plot.
that
Yeah.
has potentially enormous implications for mankind and billion-dollar consequences for the company,
Yeah.
but because they haven't constantly been trying to advance themselves and promote themselves and market themselves, they end up substantially behind financially. And so, what they were trying to do as a company at the time was they were trying to figure out how to normalize that, how to slow those commercial guys down, people down from trying to move jobs every 18 months and trying to accelerate the mindset of the physicians to say, hey, look, don't spend 25 years here, spend 3 or 4, and then let's get a new set of eyes on that. Let's find something that lights you up that you can apply 100% of who you are to the next thing so that you don't get into a rut either, financially, emotionally, professionally. And so, and a lot of times what we found is that just helping clients be empowered and giving them a voice. Now, sometimes that voice has to be me. Sometimes it's, hey, it's been 4 or 5 months. We've been negotiating. My client wants to go be the chief medical officer of this company. They've gone back to the board twice to ask for more long-term incentives and increase in compensation. He really wants to take the job. The CEO and the chief counsel are on the phone. This is the final conversation. And I say, hey, listen, my client's coming out of a large pharma company. This is a startup pharma situation. And
Mhm.
we have said from day one, my client needs a change in control. So if you guys get sold off for parts, he's got some stability.
Yeah.
And we had talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. And the CEO had it. If the guy could have reached through the phone and grabbed my throat, I'm 100% sure he would have.
Sure. You're making his life complicated for sure.
So, and he basically used some profanity and said, I'll be damned if, I'm going to have somebody who answers to me have a change in control when I don't have a change in control. Either this guy believes in this company and can join us or not. And after 5 months of negotiations, I said, I'm sorry we wasted your time. And I hung up the phone. Now, the look on my client's face of, what did you just do?
Just flushed 5 months
Huh?
and a great opportunity. Golden ticket gone?
And I said to the client, at 4:30 tomorrow afternoon, you can call and take the job without the change in control. But the next person to pick up the phone loses this argument. And at early the next afternoon, the CEO called back, gave us the change in control, and he took the job. But empowering the client, and not just, it's almost like the guy who takes the kid door to door, and I'm standing there with you, but you got to sell the magazines.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you knocked once, you can kind of hear the steps in the background, and the kid's like, oh, nobody's home, let's go. No.
Yeah.
Let's
Hang
stay
in.
here.
Yeah.
Wait for it. Let's ring the doorbell again. Let's see if we can sell some magazines. So,
Yeah.
it's a little bit like that. It's certainly at a higher level than that, but because our clients are just amazing and gifted and talented. But we also run into situations where recruiters just don't get it. I had a recruiter
Sure.
that gave up 15% on the LTI, 10% on the bonus target, and 9% contributions to the retirement plan. But hey, we got the client the 10% increase in base salary that they were asking for.
Right.
What?
Yeah. Jumping over dollars to get to nickels.
Right. Like, what are you kidding? And literally, conversation with a recruiter, totally missed it. Didn't understand what the problem was.
Right. Yeah.
And so I showed him our spreadsheet that we built, and he was like, oh. I'm like, how long have you been doing this? So, well, 2 years. How many other times you screwed this up?
Also, not their expertise, right? If we
Right.
were to talk about wealth acceleration for a minute, I'd be disappointed if we didn't get into this concept before the end of our time today.
Yeah.
Wealth acceleration is not something I've heard before. Is that a Wayne Wagner original? Or where'd you get that?
I think we made it up.
Yeah.
But everybody talks about wealth accumulation, right? And they talk about retirement as though first generation wealth is only going to last for one generation, because most of the time it does. Because most of the time we build enough wealth to hopefully not bounce the last check before they put us in the ground, right? Hopefully
Sure.
leave enough to at least pay for the funeral. Um, and hopefully, and maybe there's a little bit left over, but that's not the priority. The priority is just so we can retire comfortably. And we live in the wealthiest nation to ever exist, the most opulent time. There's more money running around in more places, more opportunities to build wealth and grow wealth. And my observation is that there's two massive gaps that we need to help clients overcome. Number one, is empowering them, just like we empower them to negotiate, empower them and give them language, give them vocabulary to speak to their children about money. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's worth $50 million. And he's telling me, most important thing in my world is that each of my kids, they got to go out in the first 10 years. I'm not giving them anything. They got to figure it out by themselves. They got to make their own mistakes. And I'm like, dude, why? Because if when kings and queens raised princes and princesses, they didn't tell the prince he had to go muck the stables. What they did was they did it right, was they took him out into the towns and they introduced him to the people, and they heard the stories. And then the king taught the prince and the princess the lessons of benevolent dictatorship, of benevolent stewardship. That if the king and the queen are doing their jobs correctly, the people prosper, the nation prospers. And good outcomes come from that. And so now the king and the queen have the heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? They have the weight, the responsibility. And look, we don't live in a world of kings and queens here, but we do live in a world where first generation wealth can be built. And I posit that it can be maintained and grown through generations. It can be accelerated. And way more important than accelerating the dollars is accelerating the values.
So I hear you saying instead of send them out and kind of lead them to their own devices to figure it out, which, if I've got a prince, maybe let them live as a pauper for a little while. Perhaps they can figure this out.
Right.
I hear you saying I want to have a much more direct approach in connecting with that next
Yeah.
generation and helping them figure out how to manage this
Yeah.
with us as opposed
Yeah.
to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, and so the first part is formulating those values. The second is the practical application of how do we do that. So we have more clients than ever today helping their kids fund Roth IRAs, helping their kids fund their Roth 401ks, putting money in 529 accounts, using healthcare savings accounts, all vehicles that are built to create long-term sustainable growth on a tax favored status. And we have clients who are doing that and their kids are in diapers.
Sure.
So, and every family is going to do that a little differently, at a different mindset, a little bit different time frame, a little bit different resources. But our families are starting to think multi-generationally. And listen, we also work with a lot of sandwich generation folks. So I had a call with a client, got a call at 4:45 on a Thursday afternoon. Hey, do you have a couple of minutes? For you, of course, Trent.
Yeah.
We've got that. And he's like, well, it's late in the day. I'm like, no, let's talk. What's going on? And mom and dad's going to end up going into a long-term care facility. Mom needs to sell the house, move closer. There's some fragility to their financial stability.
Mm-hmm.
And, so the conversation is, hey, rather than mom selling the house and buying another house, why don't you guys buy the house that mom's going to live in? So you guys buy the townhouse mom's going to live in that's closer to dad in the facility.
Yeah.
We'll take mom's sale of the house proceeds, and we'll firm up their financial stability. And then we'll put that money in an account that money comes back to you to offset some of your costs of buying the house,
Purchasing the house. Yeah.
Right. So, and we put that together in 5 or 10 minutes. Now that family is already gifting the maximum amount to their kids.
Sure.
And we're already managing the money that mom and dad have. So that's a 3-generation conversation that we're having about how to make sure mom and dad are cared for, how the clients are going to they're already financially independent and he'll retire at the end of this year, hopefully. And then how are we empowering their kids to grow wealth early on in their 20s? So,
yeah, solutions like that, Wayne, is one of the reasons I love hanging around with you. Like there are just so many things like that people just don't know about. And I'm excited that you're getting a podcast out there because I get access to you. We get to walk the boards in Ocean City, but there's a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't get to hear even that a story like that exists. So
yeah.
What a great way to get this out. So if I was a relatively new listener and I'm hearing wealth acceleration again, what's the layman's definition of wealth acceleration?
Yeah. Wealth acceleration is thinking multi-generationally. That's all. That's as simple. It's as simple as that. And wealth is not defined by dollars. It's defined first by values. Because listen, the wealthiest people in the world are the happiest. They're happiest because they're comfortable. They're comfortable. They're confident. It's not that they're lazy. They're not settled or sedentary, but they're comfortable in their own skin. Years ago, when I was not comfortable in my own skin, I ended up in San Francisco and I was invited to a party, and I went to a party, and it was a group of professionals. And I will never forget how bad I crapped the bed at that meeting. I'm in this, and little did I know the actual wealth that was in the room. I mean, the average net worth in the room was probably $30 or $40 million. And I'm like a 28, 29-year-old kid. I'm, I've started my own company, but I've barely scraped the surface of where I am today. I don't have any clients that are of this level at that stage.
Sure.
And I just remember opening my mouth a couple of times and watching the looks that I got. And I thought at the time, I was like, well, that was an insulting look. It wasn't an insulting look. It was the look from a person who was settled and confident and capable in who they are and where they are in life and the impact that they are choosing to have, seeing someone who very evidently is not.
Sure.
And it wasn't disdain or disgust. It was, son, you have a lot to learn.
You're not there yet.
You have a lot to learn. And I can respect that and appreciate that now.
Sure.
At the time, I felt a little stung. And
Yeah.
so, what we ultimately want to do here through the podcast is to interact with people who are accomplishing things, who have grown, who have become something fundamentally different than where they were launched. People who are breaking generational mindset thoughts and patterns. So when we talk about things like systemic racism, for instance, or systemic poverty in our inner cities, so much of that is generational. The Bible talks about the sins of the father being visited on the children and grandchildren. And that process of it, that's really a mindset shift. So abusers abuse, hurt people hurt people. And so, how do we take the lessons that we've learned? How do we find and interact with people who are successful, who came from wherever they came from and have built something more, something better? And then, and let's learn those lessons, and let's also be exploring the values side of things. Let's be talking about what are common shared values. What should we? Now, I can't imprint my values. I have clients all the time who ask me, "How do you take your Christian faith and apply it to my investment portfolio?" No. Why? Because you have a different value set than I do. It would be malpractice for me to arbitrarily apply my own set of faith values to your investment portfolio. Now what that means is that we neither start with the construct, hey, strip clubs and pot dispensaries go to the top of the list, right? We don't start from that construct, nor do we start from the construct of we're not going to own any Chevron or any dirty energy companies. Why? Because those are wildly different values propositions. And until we get into the conversation with you and you say, most of our clients are like, your job is to make me money. Don't care how you do it, as long as it's legal. So, and help me with my taxes along the way. Most people come at it from that perspective. But to the extent that clients come to us and say, I have some values I want applied to my portfolio, that's when it becomes my job to apply that. But that values conversation on the investment portfolio carries over to life. What are the values for life? And how do we vet them out? And then how do we take the practical, pragmatic lessons and again, boil them down and inoculate our kids? So
somebody's thinking about hitting subscribe, Wayne. What could they look forward to on their Envizion More podcast?
So I think the podcast is going to be, it'll be a range of things. You're going to get to meet my whole family because we're going to do episodes with every member of my immediate family. I'm looking forward to getting all four of us together in one podcast. So we're in the corners and like the Brady Bunch family and running, but and I think there will be some valuable content that comes out of that in terms of listening to how May and I have changed our thinking and how our kids are really accelerating in their thinking. It's really fascinating to see how our kids at 22 and 19 are thinking differently than most 22-year-olds and 19-year-olds. But I think that what to expect every week is a different conversation with different people, where the goal is vetting out or pulling out some fundamental lessons of mindset shift, and the goal is wealth acceleration. And we use wealth. But again, it's not just wealth. It starts with values and becomes money. And because at the end of the day, money is just like bricks and mortar to a brick mason. If it's not used, look, brick mason, there's a pile of bricks and there's a pile of mortar. It's not much. But in the hands of a master craftsman, it becomes something amazing. Money in the hands of people who have no vision is not much. It's just a pile of money. It's just a pile of wealth. But when you start to envision the impact it can have, I had a conversation yesterday with a woman who I use the word scrappy. She's 40 years old. She has $1 million net worth, and she has done it by bootstraps and scrappiness every day of her life. And she just inherited a few $1,000,000. And my conversation with her was fascinating because she is going to, I said, here's what you don't want and you should not be looking for. You should not be looking for a financial advisor who says, give me the money, I'll send you a check, and you can retire at age 40. You should be looking for an advisor who's going to be your partner to help you think like an entrepreneur, to help you accelerate your wealth and pick your head up 20 years from now with a 20 or $30 million net worth, more than half of that in real estate, because that's been how you've built your net worth so far. Someone who's going to partner with you and help you accelerate that wealth, not for the purpose of accumulating, but along that journey, you need to figure out what kind of impact you want to have. Because at 40 years old, single, no kids, right? So not the traditional family life, but huge opportunity for impact. What does someone with a $4 or $5 million net worth and the ability to have a $20 or $30 million net worth, what kind of impact, what kind of positive impact can they have in the world? And where do they want to apply it? Right. And there's all kinds of range of, we do something called Giving Tuesday, where we pull our clients give us volunteer their favorite charities. And then we pull names out of a hat and we gave away, I think $15,000 on Giving Tuesday, $1,000 each to 15 different charities. The range of charities,
wide range,
range of causes, everything from saving the planet to saving kittens, and everything in between. The one that killed me, the one that just gutted me this year, was the one that we pulled a National Suicide Prevention organization name out of the hat. And our clients whose niece had taken her own life, it would have been her birthday, the day we were pulling that out of the hat.
Wow.
And so on that day, that family was mourning the birthday of a niece they'd lost to suicide. And so that one gutted me on that day. But the range of causes, because at the end of the day, Trent, we're stewards. We're stewards of this life. We're stewards of the wealth we have, the opportunities, the relationships. I'm stewards of my kids. It's my job to raise them well and to be a good example for them, to be a dad that they can look up to. And at the end of the day, that's what we want to do here at the Envizion More podcast, is to help all of us envision more, envision more impact. Imagine the good that can be unleashed in the world if we start to think and function and operate multi-generationally instead of with an eye towards, when can I put my feet up and die?
So we're going to do this with different guests. Guests will range, it sounds like, from vendors to sponsors, people that inspired or mentored you along the way, perhaps even other business partners, advisors. What do you think? Are we going to have Brad Johnson on? He's kind of a big deal.
I believe that we will get Brad Johnson on, his partner Sean Sparks. We've got some folks from Triad. I think we've got some other strategic partners. I want to dig into Trent Booth and Veritas Leadership one of these days, and Dan Keever, a guy who mentored me, Dan Keever's dad, Ward Keever. We'll have him on. The guy I mentioned, Brad Harris. Brad's on my aspirational. I don't even know if he'll take my call. So Brad Harris, this is a shout out on the Envizion More podcast. You are like my
we
top
need you, Brad.
10. You're my top 10 guys I want to get, and it's going to be the easiest podcast you ever do, brother, because I got much respect. So,
how about any clients? Do you think we might have any people that have been with Visionary for a while?
Yeah, we will have clients because and some of our clients are very private. We've had some conversations early on with a few, and they're like, that's not something I'm willing to do.
Not me. Nope. We're good.
And those folks are usually the physicians, right? They're not the commercial. Yeah. The commercial guys are like, yeah, when do you want me? Where do you want me?
Wait. Or just sending you headshots.
Different personalities, right? So yes, we will have and man, Trent, to think about the range of clients that we work with and the range of medicines they're working on, and the generosity that our clients have. I mean, we do charitable planning with our clients. And so when clients are in really super high income years, we do big charitable gifts to what are called donor advised funds. And between that and the charitable giving, our clients gave away millions to charity last year, millions. And their net worths went up by tens of millions. And, we have this front row seat to the lives and impact and of some absolutely stunningly successful and amazing people of deep values and conviction, and people who want to be smart about their money, smart about minimizing and managing taxes, and smart about having an impact on the next generation of their family tree and on the world at large.
It's going to be awesome. I mean, Wayne, I can't wait till we've got 20 of these in the can. I can't wait till we got 100 in the can.
We're going to be so much better at this. We're going to be so much better at this at 20 or 50 or 100. So I'm still trying to figure out. I think I'm still working on the distance to the mic, right? And trying to that, because I think there's still a little bit of Darth Vader that gets picked up.
I think you've been great.
Just because of who I am and how I breathe, I guess. But so we're going to learn so much about just the technology side of this, but we're going to learn so much about how to generate multi-generational wealth, pass things on tax efficiently, and then learn the lessons. I mean, those origin stories of our clients and the people who have mentored us and are mentoring others. I mean, that if we can boil that stuff down, it's just going to be fantastic. So, and then one of these days we're going to put, I'll throw this out there, in part for personal accountability, by God's grace, by the end of 2024, Envisioning More, the book, will be a thing. So we're starting to put the bones together for that now as well.
All right. Look at you speaking that out. Look, it's a
right.
thing now. That's a thing now.
Now I'm accountable for it. I got to deliver it.
Giddy up. It's exciting.
So, Trent, thanks so much for being with me today. I know that this is going to be a long journey for both of us, and I'm hopeful it's beneficial for your business and your network. I know it's going to be beneficial for Visionaries network and the influence that we have. We're looking forward to envisioning more together and just being lifelong learners. But thanks so much for being here with me today.
My pleasure. Can't wait for the next one. Thanks for having me, Wayne. Thank you for listening to the Envision More podcast with Wayne Wagner Jr. of Visionary Wealth Management. We hope you were encouraged and inspired by the conversation today. If you want to dig deeper into the show notes or Wayne's work at Visionary, you can find us at envisionmore.com. That's Envision with a Z. Advisory services are provided through Wealth Plan Investment Management. Wealth Plan Investment Management and Visionary Wealth Management are separate entities. The content is developed from sources believed to be providing accurate information. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The opinions and material provided are for general information and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. Thanks for listening.